So, Craig, what are you passionate about, man?
Yeah, one thing I'm passionate about is personal development, and I think that working on yourself is the best way to benefit the world. If it's more so like filling up your cup so you can fill up the cup of others. And to me, if you're feeling hollow and not like your full self or doing things that fulfill yourself, it's hard to benefit others, which I think is kind of what life is all about at the end of the day.
Yeah, I love that. And it's awesome because even when I studied abroad in England a couple years ago, I remember someone had told me a quote. They're like, if yesterday I was smart, so I want to change the world. Today I'm wise, so I'm changing myself. And I thought about it and I was like, it's so true. If I better myself, if I become a better man, if I do the right things for me, it'll then inspire the people around me. Wait, like, yo, he's improved. Like, how'd you do that? Right? It's like show people rather than tell people.
Yeah, I think that's a key point, and it resonates with me because I've done little things throughout my life, and then people have told me like, "Oh, I want to do something like that," and it's not like these big achievements. It's more so like waking up early to go work out, or being able to read a book consistently, or just meditation, or these little practices. Right? It's like people they're like, "Oh, I know I should probably do something like that," and it's like for me, it was seeing others do that and seeing how it benefited them that inspired me. So by me doing these things, it kind of like passes on the wisdom I gained from them and helps me to inspire others.
Yeah, and I always wondered and thought like in life, like people maybe who were student athletes, because obviously I knew you in high school, I knew you were a student athlete, I was as well. So we always had that natural grind mindset. But then you see people who always had that grind mindset, whether it was in band, whether it was in sports, whether it was in school, like just people who had that grind mindset or just wanted to become better at something. It was always cool to see like after college, after high school, you see why did they become who they are? Why are they doing what they're doing now? And sometimes you look at someone's life and you're like, yo, bro, that makes so much sense why you do that. Oh, cool. But then sometimes you wonder how many people don't live up to their potential because of the fear of what society tells them to do, because of maybe getting lazy one year and then allowing that one lazy year to destroy a couple more years. But then it all comes into those little tiny habits, like you're saying, that kind of actually add up so much.
Absolutely. No, I couldn't agree more. I think people are almost scared of going down a path where they could like tap into their potential in a sense because it may seem there may be uncertainty there that they're comfortable with where they're at or how life has been going. So sometimes it takes some courage to really change up what you're doing and take a leap of faith, if you will.
Yeah, what are some small things that you've done in your life over the last couple of years that you've thought is such a small little minute habit, but how you've seen such a giant result from?
Absolutely. I think reading is one of those things. So just putting these, like I like to read philosophy, biographies, or just reading about things that I'm trying to develop, whether that's physically, financially, socially, just trying to improve myself. So having the wisdom from other people that have done a lot more than me help me along the way, and just I believe that it helps to frame my mindset and the way that I'm able to express myself, whether that's through through writing, through doing podcasts, or just making content and that sort of thing.
Yeah, no. And it's cool because even when you make like content, you read, you do different things, you start to like challenge yourself in different ways that maybe something you never thought you would do naturally. But when you challenge yourself to do new things, whether it be like you said, try to read a new book, try to do this, try to do that, any realm of any creative field, financial field, social field, it all kind of pours into one another. So like the more socially intelligent you get, sort of the more emotionally intelligent you get. The more spiritually inclined you become, the more you trust your intuition, which then in turn makes you more financially smart. And then it all like just flows into one another. Have you noticed that? And what are the ways you feel like you've noticed that change, even if it was over time, or the quick change as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I've definitely noticed it in my life. The times when I'm feeling limited or down in my emotional state or my social interactions is times when I'm not taking care of the foundation. And to me, that foundation is based on physical health and financial well-being. So if I have those things in order, I feel like I'm in a much better space to elevate or expand my life when it comes to positive emotions, positive social interactions, continuing to grow intellectually and spiritually. When I have that foundation, I feel like I'm in a better spot to continue to expand.
No, it's awesome. So, I want to go through each and every one of the different like kind of disciplines. So, first starting with like the physical discipline. Tell me a little bit about like your physical discipline journey and just kind of what you personally do to make sure that physical self-worth is at a high level.
Yeah. So luckily I've had a lot of good coaches and mentors and teammates as I was like a kid, just growing up, always being in different sports. So I'm grateful for that and the guidance that they have given me, and the times that I've fallen off track in whatever area of my life. I notice that it comes back to my physical health. So making that a priority is so important to me, and having a goal, whether it's like 3 months, 6 months, something out there that I'm aiming for, or even it just could be like longevity in the health and wellness of myself. Just having something that I'm aiming for, like a vision for the future that is inspiring to me, helps me to set a plan and kind of have these intentions when it comes to my nutrition, recovery, and training in that matter.
What is harder? Like everyone always talks about like whether the nutrition is the harder part, the going to the gym, the mental health, and I've obviously heard different high-level athletes, different people always say the mental health, the part of it is harder, the nutrition part is hard, and the physical part is easy. But some people might think that the opposite. So what do you personally think?
That's a great question. I think it does vary by person, or kind of like what your habits are initially, or like before you're trying to make a change, if you will. So to me, the physical aspect of like going in and training is the easiest part. Now, I have learned a lot about the nutrition and the mindset, or like the recovery and those kind of aspects over time. But to me, I feel like being an athlete, more or less like year round, I had the habit already of exercising or moving my body, and I feel off if I'm not doing that. Whereas I feel like I can get by if my nutrition isn't like really at a high level for a little while, or if my recovery isn't great for a little while, I can get by. But I feel as though I need to move my body, so that comes naturally to me.
Yeah, no, and I definitely agree. For me, like I always think about all those different things. I always thought like maybe the mental part has always been there, especially being religious and having that spiritual strength is nice. But then for me, I just do terrible when it comes to like recovery, because they're like, you should be sleeping up to LeBron sleeps 10 hours, Ronaldo sleeps 11 hours for this, and they take naps and they do this to recover. And I'm like, I don't sleep. I don't sleep like that at all. You know, like
no,
I don't have that.
included.
Yeah, like, I almost feel like I don't have the time to be sleeping that much either. Then and obviously when you're a professional athlete, that's your job, that's your career. Like you're gonna be making sure that you're 100% tip top. But then obviously, like if you're just average fitness person, you're not like a professional athlete or anything, then how do I make sure I recover at the high level and do that? How do I make sure I stretch before I work out? How to make sure I use the foam roller, even doing ice baths, sauna, all those different things where not everyone has an ice bath, not everyone has a sauna, everyone has access to some of these things. So then you wonder, and you're like, okay, like what do I do for recovery? And then I always think like that's probably for me personally the hardest part. But then it's interesting that, again, like you said, varies per person.
Yeah, and I think to me the way I look at it is training, and then nutrition, and then recovery. So recovery could be like sleep, or it could be active forms of recovery. But I do believe that the mental aspect is what kind of drives all of that. Now, to me, moving your body and eating clean and recovering well is going to have like a synergistic effect, or benefit your mental state as well. But I do think that, making a decision, or using, having the right mindset, or setting the intention to be positive before you see a positive result, is going to help you to push through when it's hard to exercise, or when it's hard to get the right amount of sleep, or do some recovery that you need to do, or to eat and nourish your body with whole foods and good ingredients.
Yeah, and obviously nowadays with the level of food quality, how easily accessible it is to get basically crap food everywhere, how cheap it is, but then you have that same side of the coin where you have the ability to think, if I even have that intention, like you said, and something for me that I've learned over the last couple of years that I love that you mentioned was that every single thing that is in creation or in existence started as the thought in the mind.
Absolutely.
And if everything starts as a thought in the mind, if you feed your thoughts constant positivity, you're feeding your thoughts constant growth mindset, you're telling yourself constantly, I can achieve, I can believe in this, I can do this, then you're most likely going to do it, because the thought in your mind has already lasted longer than, I think it was like 17 seconds it lasts in the mind. New brain like synapses and new neurons fire within that thought pattern. Then when you're having that focus on this said topic, that's what you then will attract and or manifest and or become, because you're constantly thinking about these things. And what you think about, you become. So if I'm thinking about health, I'm thinking about eating properly, I'm thinking about going to the gym, I'm thinking about doing these right things, the mind almost pushes you to doing those things. So if you have, like you said, the mindset, then the rest kind of follows.
Yeah, absolutely. I think just setting those intentions in your mind is going to be more or less the key to making success in your wellness journey, or whatever, I guess, your physical goals are, whether that's like athletic performance or aesthetics, or just feeling like confident in your ability to function in everyday life and kind of live a healthy lifestyle for a different purpose.
And going off of the mental part, what is something that you do personally that you think that helps you with the mental part when you're feeling down? Because obviously we're not robots, we're human. We have ranges of emotions. Naturally, you're going to feel pretty crappy one day. Maybe you even feel sad, even have a super ecstatic happy day. But then you feel like you reward yourself. So how do you kind of manage like your range of emotions mentally? And then what are ways that you kind of manage through that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say when I'm feeling down, I tend to go for a walk, and that helps me to just get out into nature and move my body and kind of like, I think Ryan Holiday, one of the authors on a lot of Stoic books lately, has said just like, I think more or less like going for a walk won't make anything worse. Like if you have something you're dealing with, there's no downside to going for a walk and thinking over it for a little while. And I think that is definitely true for me. I try to go for a walk every day. The next thing I would say is journaling. So to me, journaling is I write down things I'm grateful for, I write down my goals, and then I write down priorities. So if I'm struggling with something, and hopefully it's at least like I'm struggling with something that is related to my goals, because otherwise I shouldn't really be putting much energy into it, in my opinion. And then I write out priorities. So it's like, all right, what actions can I actually take to, well, I guess first I did say gratitude. So changing my mental state from feeling down to feeling grateful and being positive. So I think that setting, pre-framing your mind with that intention is going to be helpful for the rest of the process. And then I go into my goals, and then I go into priorities. So if I'm struggling with something, the priorities are going to be focused on that. And sometimes it can be, priority, go for a walk to clear my head, or priority, make a call to so-and-so, or priority, record this piece of content, or write out a plan of how I'm going to solve this, or just things like that, like writing things out. I think getting things out of your head and on paper just gives me a sense of control and a sense of relief when it comes to the things that I'm maybe dealing with more so internally.
Yeah. And I even personally, I use a planner and a journal all the time, like every single day. And I'll always plan my day maybe the night before or the day of. But I always tell people when I plan my day the day before and I know exactly what I'm going to do on my planner, this is the work I'm going to do, this is the food I'm going to eat, this is the prayers I have to do, this is the reading I have to do, the exact chapter to the next chapter, and I have it planned, I just feel like it flows. When I wake up, I almost feel like, okay, I know what I need to do. Yeah. But when I wake up and I look at my planner and it's like empty and I didn't do it the night before, I was lazy, I didn't do it, it takes me like an hour to get like really flowing with my day. Mm-hmm. And again, me personally, I've always had like hyperactivity, but I never used it as a crutch. I was like, okay, it's a superpower, again, that mindset thing where everyone knows, like everyone knew me when I was little, knows like that kid's a wild child. That kid is bouncing off the walls. But then I started learning all the little things I can do to make it better. When I would study or do anything in college, there was like this white little room. There was like 4 walls, maybe the size of like just this table. And I would sit in the chair and it was blank. And I would sit there by myself, no phone, no nothing. I would just work on whatever I need to work on. And that helped me because it was like everything is so quiet. There's no distractions. Just work on what you need to work on and get out. But then I write things down every day. Since like high school, I would do this every day. And everyone's like, you should use your planner. Like, they gave us free agenda books. And no one ever used them. But I used them then because I was like, I actually kind of like making little check boxes and feeling really successful. Task of the day. Mm-hmm. And then I still do that to this day. And I've noticed that because of that, those little micro goals throughout my days over the last year, 2 years, 3, 4, 10 years, you really do notice like that trajectory of like having it go. And then even waking up and having gratitude. Like there's so much to be grateful for, even in hard times, where those hard times are going to make you a stronger person. Mm-hmm. So then having that gratitude, changing the mindset of how can this be a blessing for me? How can this bad thing actually be turning me into a better person? How could it be pushing me into my right path? But again, it's so hard in the moment. But like you said, when you write it out, it becomes excellent. So I do really like that.
Yeah, I think reframing these things from negatives into positives. Like I think a lot of people see success and they're like, oh, that person was probably always that way. But to me, when you really look deeper into things, a lot of times that's what they struggled with initially, or they had this fear or this frustration that they had to, instead of trying to avoid it or distract themselves from it, they knew that there was something more that they could do, and they decided to use that fear or frustration and point themselves in the right direction. So I think sometimes we try to avoid or remove ourselves from negative emotions. But if we're able to tap into them and sit in them comfortably, and I learned this more from like meditation, it's like you're going to be all right, and use these things intentionally as opposed to just being frustrated and, being down on yourself every time these kind of things come up.
Yeah, and I actually watched like a video and then like a kind of a lecture by Earl Nightingale, and he had talked about the strangest secret of the world, and that he's like, most men don't think. And I was taken aback by that first statement he said. And then as he's like explaining and stuff, and how they did studies, and they were like, they took 100 men, and then these 100 men, they asked them, hey, what do you want to be? Successful, rich, et cetera, et cetera. And obviously, all these 25-year-old men were like, yeah, I want to be rich, I want to be successful, I want to be this. And they were all educated. They were all of like a class of people who had the privilege to want to be these things, obviously. But then as they like looked back on them 40 years later, only one of them was like very wealthy. So, okay, 1% of people became real wealthy. But then I think 4 of them after him were like financially free. You know, they're chilling. They don't need to worry about money. I think then 5 of them still worked, like past retirement age, and then the rest were basically broke. Mm-hmm. And then they had asked, and they were like, so what was the difference between these men? Because they all kind of had similar starting points. What was the difference? And those 5 men, for example, that we're going to say at the top, they didn't conform. And what do you mean by conform? But conformity is like comfort. Like when you conform to what society tells you to do. Hey, just do this thing for yourself, do this, do this, do this. And this is what everyone's doing, so you do it. But if you want a life that everyone has, then do that. But if you want a life that less people have, you have to do that work. And then it broke down even the next step of why did they get there? What actually helped them get there? And they noticed that those 5 men took actionable steps and goals and set goals and intentions for what they wanted. So then it makes me think, wait, if the only difference between these people were to just set up goals and know what you want out of life, write it down consistently, and one by one work towards that worthy ideal, you're going to get there. So I really like that you kind of naturally are talking about those little micro strategies in getting to the next level.
Right. No, I think it makes sense. Like if you're, if you look at a team of athletes when they're in high school or middle school, it's like the guys that are actually having the intention to, like if you're in middle school and you're starting to see some success and you want to go play like a Division I sport, or you just want to be, maybe be like the MVP or whatever it is. If you have that thought and you actually work towards it, you're just incredibly more likely to actually achieve some sort of success as opposed to just showing up to hang out with your friends, which there's nothing wrong with either. But it's like, same thing goes for like wealth creation. Like if you're trying to, and luckily I got to see the insides of this as I worked with a financial planner and in investment management for a little while. You're able to see who's actually like intentional with how their money is being used. Like, does every dollar have a purpose, or is it, I spend I spend things on the things that I want to buy, and then the rest I try to save or invest. But if you're more intentional, you're going to be investing, and then you're going to be saving, and then you spend what's left over, as opposed to just trying to spend and then holding on to whatever you might have left.
Yeah, and even when it comes down to like finances and different things, a lot of people don't understand like how to actually like leverage their own money, leverage debt, leverage different things, and even do it without acquiring interest. Even because for me, being Muslim, like we're not allowed to like accrue interest or anything like that. So when we buy things or invest in things, realistically speaking, you shouldn't be investing with riba or interest. And it's difficult because nowadays our society is like so interest based. Like student loans have interest, this has interest, and then you get hit and bombarded with all these different things. Then you wonder, okay, what can I do with my money that can make me more money, or what can I do to make sure I save the most? But then push it into investments. Do I really need this new thing? Do I really need this new thing? Because obviously sometimes I always tell people like you should be spending money. Like you shouldn't just have it sitting. You should find a use for it. And like you said, whether it be spending on something new for yourself because you earned it, you deserve something nice, yeah, go buy it. It's normal. But when it gets into consumerism that we all get locked into because naturally I can order something online right now, 2 days later, it's in my front door. So then naturally we fall into this as like a society. But then like you said, when you're intentional about what you're spending, you're intentional about doing research on, okay, if I'm going to buy this, this is going to last me. If I buy this product, it's not going to be just something that sits in my drawer for the next 10 years and I never use it. So I do like that intentional aspect. So now we talked about the mental aspect of like being like mentally there with it, the physical aspect where you're pushing yourself and you're moving all the time, and then financially now we're talking where you're saying when you use your finances, be intentional about it as well. So then when it comes into like finances, into more like the spiritual, kind of how do you adjust with that? Because I feel like for me personally, I've always found that to be the hardest part, where like if I had no morals, it'd be so easy to make money, you know? But then people make money in that way. But then naturally, you always notice that the people who make money with no morals end up losing it all. The money's attached to like wickedness, bad energy. So how do you kind of manage it in like obviously the 21st century?
Yeah, I think it's about first understanding yourself and how do you fit into this world, and understanding, universal laws or laws of nature and that sort of thing. And then to me, it's about more so just looking at yourself in a way that how can I serve others? Because to me, if you are pushing humanity forward, or you're making the world a better place, and you're able to do that, I think that's more or less a spiritual act. Even if these are small actions, I think they really add up and make give life more meaning, and you're able to just positively benefit others. And to me, that's just so meaningful in a sense. And I find that meditation helps me detach from my senses and my personal, like seeking things like pleasure, and more so getting aligned with purpose and aligning the rest of my areas of life for total wellness within, all these aspects, to reach a higher purpose or self-transcendence and that sort of thing in the spiritual sense.
Yeah, and do you think that once you work towards enlightenment, right, where you kind of go through those emotions, where I always look at like that chart where it's like, like different colors of the spectrum. It's like the top is that enlightenment, that joy, the happiness, the self-awareness. And what do you think took like how they say like do the work? What was the work that you feel like you had to do to start reaching those levels of like understanding even that you're chasing that enlightenment? Or like what were steps that you personally as a man did to get from young like boy to young man to adult man, and then on upward and onward?
Awesome. Yeah. So luckily I've had a good amount of time spent with yoga and that sort of thing, and like learning about meditation. Like I read about all these things and I've practiced them for a while. So I initially got into yoga for improving like flexibility and mobility, because I was just lifting weights and all my movements were rigid, and I was like having like shoulder issues, and like just my body wasn't feeling good. And then I got into understanding, or at least in my practice, implementing it in a way where it was more of, instead of just like a workout, it was more of leading into a spiritual practice. So understanding the breath work and how to breathe properly to really just calm myself down and be less stressed, and like from that space. So like as you move up in the chakras, if you will, you're basically opening up more energy centers as you rise from like lower temptations up to fulfilling higher up desires, if you will. Does that?
Yeah,
does that
of
make
course.
sense?
Yeah, because obviously now like, it's so easy to be thinking about anger. It's so easy to be greedy. It's so easy to go party, drink, smoke, all these different things. It's easy to go into temptations, but it leads to a road of a hard life. But doing the hard things leads to the road of an easy life.
Right.
And
right.
it's so it's so like this funny little dichotomy where it's like you're like, okay, do hard thing for easy life, do easy thing for hard life, and then you wonder like, okay, it kind of makes sense that way. But then when you're doing this full easy life of like make money in the wrong way, drink and smoke whatever you want, no training, this, maybe get a little fat, be eating whatever you want. It's awesome. It's great to feel that way. But at the end of it all, you won't feel great. You're gonna feel depleted of something. But when you're working towards this enlightenment, you're working towards not wanting anything and just being who you are as a soul and a spirit, and using your body as a vessel, it makes you feel so much more at peace with situations that happen in your life. You understand that this is merely just a test. This is merely just a vessel that I'm using. I am a soul, not just a body. Then you start detaching yourself from that, and then you realize, wait, when I detach from the physical and I think about me as a spiritual essence or energy, it's easier to, like you said, have an intuition. It's easier to find that enlightenment. It's easier to become the best version of yourself, because then what do? You know yourself. So in doing that, how do you feel like you've led up per chakra, or like per like kind of enlightenment wheel of per se? So how did you as someone kind of go from, obviously naturally we're all young, we're mature, we grow, we adapt. What were like maybe key points in your life that like altered that like next path, if you will?
I don't have that like key points, I guess, that come to mind initially. I'm sure some of that shaped who I am, but to me, it's about more of like the small decisions. So it's like, what are the things that are holding me back? And I feel as though I only regret the times where I was like doing things that are self-deprecating, if you will, and not living up to my full potential. And that those are the things that really stick with me. It's like if I would have started these positive habits sooner, I could have been much better off. And luckily now I'm learning them, or I have learned some of these things, and sometimes they come up to reteach me to just to make sure I know them for sure, right? But learning these things and like just being able to self-reflect and understand what makes me or what helps me to move forward, and then kind of like I guess just using all these things, like the way I think about it initially is also Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So you have your physiological needs, which I relate to like physical wellness. Then you have your safety needs, which I relate to financial wellness. And kind of as you move up these needs that are being met, I think so. Like if you have a good physical base and financial base, then you move on to more of like emotional and social wellness, or your esteem needs, your belonging and love and belonging. So to me, it's like whatever phase I'm at in my life, that's what I'm going to be learning about. As long as I keep my foundation strong, I can continue to move up. But if I start to neglect these things such as physical or financial, or my emotional state isn't good, then I'm going to suffer in my spiritual practice or my intellectual growth.
Mm-hmm. No, I really do like that. And for me, when I was growing up, I remember like taking a psychology course when I was like in, I think, ninth grade, and I took one in high school as well, like for like a class. And I remember like always really like learning about psychology, because the study of like how our minds really work and like the emotional aspect. And I always liked knowing about that kind of stuff, because I always felt like I was very naturally emotional and in tune with my emotions and understanding others' emotions and being very empathetic with the world. And I feel like life had given me a lot of early life lessons to make me that way. So that then when I like was learning about all of this, I started to think like over the last maybe 5 years, I've obviously really adapted and grown so much. But then I start to have this question where like I don't find it on podcasts, I don't find it in books, and I don't understand where to find this besides like my religion, I would say, and like reading scripture and different hadiths. But then, and I wanted to ask you this question because I've always like wondered, like when you look at like the hierarchy of needs, right? And you look at like obviously your basic physiological needs are met, different things. You have shelter, food, water. You have food for the day. You have shelter, and you have your body and your health. Boom, perfect. Now that means you have the rest. The rest of the stuff is easy to get. Then those main needs are the hard part. Okay, cool. But then I always tell people, it's like, even for me, like I feel like I got more spiritual and more religious and more focused on who I was before I really worried about like the finances sometimes, or I worried about like belonging and stuff, because I kind of felt like I did it backwards. And when I tell people this, they're like, how? Like, why'd you skip a step? Because it just felt like something was telling me, really think deeply about who you are. And then I felt like the rest sort of followed, because when I found out who I was from like my soul, or who I want to become, then I feel like then I adjusted and created those next layers.
Right.
So I feel like after you have like those basic needs, then boom, top, and then I went to bottom. So what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think the perspective I actually have is similar. Like I was like trying to become the highest version of myself, or self-actualizing, which to me is like more towards that intellectual side. But I did meet myself, or I did have these thoughts or these aspirations from those levels of thought, if you will, or the aspiration towards that. And then I understood that I can't be my self-actualized self if I don't have quality relationships and I'm impacting people's lives in a positive way. Or I feel as though it would be a benefit to society if I know how to manage money well. Not saying like I need to earn the most money or something like that. It's like, do I manage it well? Do I put every dollar to a good use? Or am I just taking in cash and then like spending it on things that aren't meaningful or that aren't contributing to my well-being, if you will.
Mm-hmm. And I think I really do appreciate hearing that, because I always ask people, it's how do you then go through emotions yourself to then feel this way? Like I always look at different videos, different things where they always talk about how, yeah, you got to go through the suck. You got to go through the stuff that sucks. You have to go through the hard part to get to the success. You have to sacrifice this. You have to sacrifice that. And then logically, it all makes sense. Like genuinely, when you listen to it, you're like, okay, like duh, that makes sense. Like, okay, like if I drop my ego, you know what, you're right, I do have to put in a little bit more work. Maybe I am being a bit lazy. But then I always wonder, like, when you're in this period of you're not around the people you need to be around because you're not at the level that the people you need to be around are, but you're in this like middle ground of like getting to that level. How do you go through the emotions there? And then as I look at different videos, different things, it feels like people talk about the beginning part, like the grind, and they talk about like sort of near the end of like going through it. But I feel like everyone kind of skips that middle part. And granted,
Yeah.
it's probably very different for many different people. But I personally feel like in my middle part, and I'm probably still sort of in the middle, near the end of middle of my part emotionally and spiritually as how it feels. I always think that so far it's been like just wait. It's almost like a waiting game of like going through every emotion to get to that level. And I know Nipsey Hussle always says like I went through every emotion to get to where I am now, where he was. You know what I mean? So it's like it always makes me think like if that's the case, you really have to go through the emotions you never thought were an emotion. Or like you said, you might learn the same lesson a couple times until you really mastered that lesson, until that thing never even bothers you anymore. That same frustration you used to have, you don't even think about it anymore because like you've slain that level, you've slain that dragon. Now you get the same dragon, but now it's with the armor. You get that same dragon, now it can breathe fire. And you get that same dragon, now it has little minions that he summons. And it's like you think like all those little steps that happen within that same beast. So I always wonder like how do you feel like is the best way to kind of go through that, and like how do you feel like you go through that?
Yeah, I love that analogy. I think it holds a lot of weight. To me, it's about shedding the parts of yourself that aren't ready to live at that higher level. So the way I look at it is like if you're in a video game and if you try to go out and slay the beast right away, you're definitely not going to be there. You need to build up your resources. You need to build up your foundation. You need to develop your skills. You need to connect with, reach out to the NPCs and like talk to them and like figure out because they're probably in an environment that they understand things better than you or have a different perspective and like learning from others. So you just need to continue to develop yourself and provide value and take these resources and turn them into something helpful or learn these lessons, develop these skills. And as you do that, then you're no longer the same, you're no longer like the same person. You have more developed skills, you have better connections, you have this and that, and you're more comfortable going into a big boss fight or, slaying that dragon, if you will, once you have done that work and you're no longer like, I guess you can just do so much more. You're just, I think it's like truly shedding parts of yourself that no longer serve who you desire to be. And I think that you can do a lot of things on the positive side, and to me, a lot of times I've noticed it's not always about doing more, but doing less of the things that hold you back.
I love that. And it's also because even in what you were saying, it kind of made me think of like a quote, kind of mentally, just like thinking of it, where it's like you were saying, like if you want to become a better person, if you want to go on this journey, if you want to do these things, and like you said, if life is a video game and you have to go talk to the NPCs, nowadays everyone uses NPC as like a derogatory term. So that if life is a video game and you're going to run into NPCs throughout your life, understand that NPC could still teach you something.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I mean, if you like, I just think of like, I don't play much video games nowadays, but I think back to like old video games where like the people you're talking to are like, it could be like a bum of sorts, but like you still need to go experience that, or you need to go talk to this crazy character in this video game that probably has no relevance to the desire that you want to be, but you still gain something from their perspective that helps you to, kind of go through that hero's journey and come full circle and help out the people that are either where you used to be or the people that you really love and value.
And even in video games too, where it's like that character, that NPC, that individual can lead you to the next quest, to lead you to the next thing. And in life, something I always really love and hold so like have so much value on is the butterfly effect, where you don't know, like the smallest thing you do could lead to the next thing and the next thing. And momentum is a cruel mistress. She can turn on a dime in a moment, right? Where you could be in a game where it's 1-1, 2-1. Now they scored another, but then you score that second. And they always say in soccer, at least because I played so much, they say 2-0 is the hardest score line to keep. Because when you're up 2-0, it's like, that's sick. But then if I score one, now I have all the momentum. I just scored, now it's 2-1. Now it's only a 1-goal game.
Right.
I score another. There's so many instances where people are down 2-0, then they win 3-2. So many instances in soccer that happens because psychologically it's really hard when you're up 2-0
Yeah.
and you get scored on. Same thing in basketball where it's like you're up 2-0 or you're not happy. When they ask Kobe, he's like, job's not finished. Because he had that mentality where he's like, no, like 2-0 is nothing. Like you need to win. Like you can't be comfortable at 2 because you're just up an extra 1. There's no leeway here. So I really do like, I just feel like that kind of mindset is what makes you this like unbreakable almost.
Yeah. No, I think that holds true for the person on the opposing side. So the opposing team that's down 2-0. When it's even, things are good. You know, you have this optimism that you may win. When you're down by 1, you're like, all right, we let 1 get by. But when you're down by 2, you're like, all right, this is it. We have now this urgency and this desire to not go down by 3 because that's really hard to come back from. So we need to get our stuff in order. We need to go out there and, you know, make it a closer game. So we're only down by 1 goal. And it's just, you know, 1 goal at a time. You can't score 2-3 points in a soccer game at once, right? So just trying to wing that next possession or get the ball out of your defensive zone and kind of continue on. I think that being down in something doesn't mean you're out, but it means you have a greater sense of urgency to even the score.
Yeah, and something even with that is that sometimes when you're down 2-0, they always say like the game opened up. So like goals are scoring, that means the game's kind of open. When it's like 0-0, it's like the stall wall, this like chess game sometimes tactically. Yeah. It's kind of an ugly game sometimes. That's where sometimes people can say, oh, soccer looks boring. Where like when it is 0-0, it's more of a chess game than it is really like a soccer game. But then once the game's 2-0, they always say like the game's now open. But then that losing team now has nothing to lose.
Right.
So they start playing a little more like, whatever, run it.
Yeah.
And then you start seeing flair come out. You start seeing like that energy come out. And then you're like, oh, snap, like that's where that momentum can turn. But it requires the types of players that can come back. Because certain teams, like everyone looks at statistics, right? Where it's like, wow, how has this team come back from the most 1-0 down at halftime? This is the only team that's ever done it this many times. Yeah. This many teams score end game goals. Why are goals scored in the last couple minutes? Because people are tired, people are exhausted. Who has that it factor to really grind out those that last couple minutes?
Absolutely.
So it's nice to always see that kind of, even in sports, you see it even within the statistics.
Yeah, I think like that's when you see like what teams have that winner's mindset. Like they've seen themselves winning or visualized it, or they've practiced like Tom Brady does, where it's, you know, every practice rep is the Super Bowl, and then he gets there and it's just another day because he's done it so many times, like in his head, in the way that he practices. So it's like implementing these things, like they have meaning even when they may seem just like small instances, but like, you know, whatever your habit is, don't think of it as this small habit. Say this is, you know, the seed that I'm planting to grow this forest down the line.
Mm-hmm. And what is like something you would recommend, obviously now since we've spoken about all those 4 disciplines about like personal development and becoming a better person, what is something that you would recommend to first your younger self?
Yeah, absolutely. I tend to think in frameworks and like steps or lessons, and one simple one that I've thought of lately kind of has an analogy to a tree. So I would add these 3 things. First, inspiration. Find some source of inspiration, whether that's somebody that's the best at your sport or somebody that's the best in your financial endeavors, somebody that's done it before, or an inspiration of like, why do you want to do this thing? Next, you want to educate yourself. So with education, you're going to be learning, you're going to be reading, but you also need to implement these things. And then the third aspect is going to be connection. So connect yourself with the people that are doing what you want to do or that are able to assist you on the way, and you can provide them some value too. So the way I think about it with a tree is that inspiration is going to be your sunlight. That's where you're going to grow towards. You're going to aspire towards that. And then you have the water, so that's going to be your education. So you soak up this water and then you're able to continue to grow. Now that you have it, without it, you would probably die out. Same thing with just getting too much sun and no water or no soil. And then the soil is going to be that grounding effect of connecting with these people that help you to weather the storm and grow your roots deep and continue to evolve.
Yeah, and it's cool because even then, like when you have a really strong foundation, when you have that resources, that nourishment, and then you have like that enlightenment, that light, when you have all those 3 things in your life, everything else kind of can happen. Then the branches can come out. Then after a while, and this is where like that middle ground is, trees don't bear fruit for the first couple of years.
Right.
Most of them don't, at least, right? But then that's this middle ground that we were just talking about, where it kind of you gotta go through this like waiting game of being developed.
Yeah.
Where like it doesn't take overnight to develop into like this excellent human being that is deserving or is rewarding of the work that they put in. So many people are like, yeah, I made no money on YouTube for 8 years. Yeah, I did this thing for 5 years, didn't see any results. Yeah, I've been training this sport for 19 years before I got my big break. Like, and people say this constantly. And then when you tell people that, they're like, nah, but I'm not willing to do the work. I'm like, but you have a degree? It's like, yeah, I have a degree. Okay, so you spent 4 years to get a degree. You have a master's. Okay, you spent 6 years to get a master's. You have a PhD. You spent 10 plus years getting the PhD. Oh, you're a doctor. You're this. Like, you clearly can set goals. But these were goals that were outlined and given to you by a curriculum that was already in place for you. Most people, I realized, can't give themselves a curriculum, because it's the hardest thing is to self-govern your own mind. But if you can do that and give yourself your own curriculum of how to be great and your own inspiration, like you said, gain the inspiration from it, you can. But for some reason, people think it's hard. But realistically, they've already done the work before.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it's like if you actually have a goal, it's like not many people are going to commit to it for more than 6 months, whatever your goal may be, if you're actually willing to sit there and develop it. And I think I had a thought more about kind of like going back to the tree analogy, like you need to go through fall and kind of like shed your leaves every once in a while, and then you can go through winter, and it's like that time of winter, kind of like that time between, as you mentioned earlier, like between like when you started and developing into, more of like when you're actually experiencing the results that you had desired. But going through that winter is when you're like hardening the bark that's around your tree, and then you have, it's just like things aren't always fruitful for the first couple months or something like that. But come 6 months goes by, comes around, spring opens up. Now you're starting to flower or grow leaves, and now the birds are chirping, and everybody wants to kind of be around that environment, if you will.
Yeah, and it really is kind of amazing because even like nature shows us every time. But we're so blinded, right, by living inside all the time, or working from home sometimes, or doing this, or being inside a cubicle, doing this, doing that, and living behind our phones, our screens. But like you said, when you go outside, how good do you feel? Being in nature, seeing things, seeing the life, even just watching animals sometimes, watching birds move from branch to branch, thinking like when that bird woke up this morning, it didn't know where its food was going to be, but then they got food, so like if there's trust, like they have so much trust in the universe, they have so much trust in God, they have trust in an energy or spirit, but we're not gonna, and it baffles me sometimes when I sit with myself and like long enough. And how many people probably sit in silence now?
That's a great question. Not enough.
Right? And then sitting in silence allows you, your brain, to literally just start thinking and see where your thoughts go naturally. Nowadays, like, okay, I need to drive with music on, I need to have this, I need to have background noise, I need to have this, I need to have that. But the most restful sleep is when you're sleeping in silence. The most restful thinking is when you're thinking in silence. Your best work, your best ideas are when you're all alone. Like, to be alone sometimes is really beneficial because then there's no distractions emotionally, spiritually, mentally from anyone else's opinions of you, the subtle gestures that someone might give you. And even the people who are like incredibly strong, who like nothing breaks them, nothing gets to them. You could even think about like some of these athletes. Like, imagine 40,000 people chanting, booing you because you just missed a goal. Like, but then they score the game winner. Like, what does that require in the mind to be able to do something so excellent? That strength. But then people look at them like, oh, they're just playing a sport for a career. That's easy. I'm like, but they don't realize like at that level it is not easy. And nothing is easy if it's going to be at that high level where there's tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of eyes on you constantly. So again, it kind of goes to show it's like diamonds are made under that pressure. But then some people like will do the talking about it, but they won't see the work needed to have gone through the emotion.
Yeah, definitely. I resonate with what you're saying, like people doing the talking about it, because it just seems like a lot of people have opinions that aren't sound, that are often expressed and then picked up by the world or by society. And I think that there's a benefit to not always having to have an opinion on these things that are going on, but I think just like trying to learn and understand is often like looked at in a off-putting way. Like if you don't make a decision right away on something, then maybe you're off. But to me, it's just helpful to learn and understand things at least enough to have even if you don't know like the last 20%, just having a good idea on things, and then working towards a solution as opposed to just like complaining about things that you see, or taking negative steps, if you will, as opposed to just working on yourself and continuing to improve.
Yeah. So since we asked the question of asking you what would you tell younger self, what would you tell just like an average viewer, someone just watching and thinking, you know what, I want to improve myself, but unfortunately nowadays when you hear like the self-help content and like, see, me personally, like I get really annoyed and like I feel like, why are they saying it like this? Like there's better ways to like go about growth and self-improvement where you're using your brain to improve, not just my brawn. It's brain and bronze. You can't just be super strong and that's it and that's all I am, but then you get this ego. But like you need to have like no ego, but also the ego to be strong and fit, but what's your reasoning? And then it's like, how would you kind of manage that or give advice to someone who's maybe looking at self-help things and thinking maybe it's cringe, looking at self-help things and thinking maybe, why is the community so like toxic or like toxically positive or toxically like, do this, if not you're just a coward, you're just a weak person, you suck at everything. But like that's not how life is. So what would you recommend, I guess, to someone like that?
I would say to use these things and in a way that inspires you. Like you don't need to read every single self-help book if you're not going out and implementing it, or you're not like, I guess the main thing is finding the inspiration in these things that helps you to play like a long game. Like you don't want to be inspired and then do all this work and then like stop. Like you didn't come into this podcast to do 5 episodes. You've done 20 plus, which is a lot better than most, right? So you want to find that inspiration, and you're doing something you're passionate about. So finding something that you care about. And I would also say trying something new, like trying something that throws off the entire matrix, because it's like what, like at a certain point you're like, these are things that I do. But if you're unhappy with your situation, in a sense, you need to go out and do something that absolutely scares you, or that is absolutely outside of what you normally do, just because you want to try and experience something new or find a new perspective. And I think those are the moments that help to reshape the path or the trajectory of your life. Like I'm sure your first like networking event probably felt very uncomfortable, but now you've been to a bunch of them and you have a good network, and you have people that come to you to try to do a lot of things, and you're growing your businesses and stuff like that. So I think it's cool that just taking those minor leaps of faith lead to more opportunities that will come your way, or more interesting activities that can help you and your community to grow.
Yeah, dude, genuinely like love that answer, because it's true. And then even just recollecting, even when you said that, like I remember my first networking event, I stand up to talk, and I'm, I would argue and say like I'm a pretty confident person. I'm well spoken. I know how to speak. I like talking about what I talk about. But when I got up to speak, I remember thinking like, my heart was in my stomach, and I'm like, why am I so nervous? Like, this is so weird. And even the first time I was like pitched like my company on television, practiced it a couple times. Yeah, maybe I probably could have practiced some more and stuff. But when I got up there to do it, it was like the first time I really spoke to like hundreds of people, lights, camera, action, lights on me, judges. I'm looking around, I'm like talking and stuff, and I'm like doing it, talking, doing what I do. But then I'm like, there was a moment where I just froze.
Yeah.
And I froze because I was just like, oh my God, I consciously was like, I'm actually doing this. Like, and I was like, I almost psyched myself out as I was doing it.
Yeah.
But this is coming from someone who like would argue and say like pretty confident person. I've always very talkative. But then I wonder, I'm like, what if someone had this type of idea, had this type of vision for themselves, but it was so scary for them to speak in front of people. But for me, like I wasn't really afraid. But then when I actually was doing it, that's where like the talking versus like the actual doing it.
Right.
And then some of the people that I watched talk and stuff, they've done it so many times. But I'm telling you, when we were out of like that pitched mindset and stuff, and they were talking, they were like, no, like I'm very introverted. Like I hate talking in front of people. I'm like, what?
Really?
Like you sound great. He's like, yeah, it's just like it took like 5 years. I'm like, 5 years? This isn't the first time I've done it. How can I like be upset about my performance when someone's been grinding at this for 5 years, doing this exact pitch, doing this exact mindset of getting up in front of people and talking? So it made me realize, like, it kind of humbled me in that moment where I was like, I got some work to do, because like you can be all extrovert, you can say you know who you are, but until you do the thing, you're never really gonna know. Same reason where someone's like, oh, my nan could have scored that, oh, she could have made that layup. But then how many times do you play pickup basketball? You play pickup, everyone's missing, everyone's messing up. It's like people can say, it's so easy to talk, but it's so hard to actually do and achieve.
No, I couldn't agree more. That's spot on.
Yeah. To me, like when you said that, it was just like that resonated. But I wanted to then ask you, like, what is something you feel like in your life personally that you've done, whether recently or not, that you're proud of?
I would say my fight that I had in October was like a big achievement for me. It was just meaningful to go out and do something that I wasn't sure I could do. Like even like I knew I could get to the weight cut, but like even that was like a challenge in itself. And then training and staying healthy and like trying to like do something with my coach was instrumental and my team was all around me, and a lot of them have fought a bunch of times before, so I was in a great environment. But I think like actually going through the journey of like just hitting a heavy bag every once in a while, and then showing up to like classes, and then learning like how to hit pads with a partner, and then sparring, and like the whole journey of like actually like getting in really good shape again after like falling off for a little while. And then just like the mindset of like, all right, I'm gonna step into a ring and I'm gonna fight. Like
Yeah.
it's one-on-one, whatever happens happens. And luckily came out victorious, and kind of like learned a lot along the way. I think having that or I guess I had some sparring competitions beforehand, so that's more like no knockouts, like you wear headgear, but going into a fight was something new to me, and I'm glad I achieved that.
Yeah. So what's like maybe the biggest thing you learned from that experience, and what's something that you learned or you went through that you weren't really expecting?
Yeah, let's start with sorry, what was the first part? Like what was like something I learned?
Yeah.
I would say like plan everything out. I think the reason that I was so confident going in is because in my head I was like, there's no way this opponent could have been as disciplined as I was, because I really planned everything out and had just this urgency through each day to make sure that I was getting these things done, going to the proper workouts, making sure I was actually going to sleep and like getting good recovery, and eating like good nutrients, and training with partners that are at a higher level than I was, or stuff like that, like going with good partners and just showing up day after day after day. I think just having a plan, which is what I like to like, I'm all about planning or optimizing like my plan for for a fight or for whatever endeavor that I have, or like towards my goals, and they can be in various aspects, but the physical one is one that I've worked through a lot before, so I feel like I have the most expertise, and I was able to create a plan for myself that I thought was like, wow, like even if I went to like one of the highest up experts, I think this plan is like perfectly tailored to me, and I just felt confident as I revised it that I was on the right path. So having a plan and being able to iterate and revise on it is going to be instrumental in any growth or any goal that you have.
Yeah, and it's cool because even then, like we talked about earlier, right? When they asked those men how are they successful, it came down to them having goals, writing little small goals down that they achieved, that they got to. And then even I listened to a TED Talk recently where it was explaining like this guy who literally was just basically like, it sounded kind of braggadocious of like his life kind of, but he started the whole premise of the whole conversation with like, I was never like this. I was a C student all throughout high school. Didn't really have like a focus or a goal. Like I was kind of all over the place and like super hyperactive. I never really sat in one space so long. But when he started making like little tiny goals, like someone was like, okay, read this book. It's like, man, read a book, like a whole entire book. But he's like, okay, I'll read like a page. So he started just reading a page a day. And then out of nowhere, he's like, I finished the book. And I was like, wait, why not just make very small little goals of the task that I want to do and break it down to small, tiny little chunks? Because one page a day is nothing. Anyone can read one page a day. It just takes a couple minutes, maybe, right? But then even for me, I've noticed that, say if I want to learn a new language, I do a lesson every day for maybe tops 5 minutes. I don't spend any more time than that. I don't want to spend more time than that. If I get inspired in one of those days to do more, I'll do more. But I don't really feel inspired to do it all that much so fast. But then 2 years later, everyone's like, how do you know so many words? Like, you actually like low-key know some words here. And I'm like, yeah, I've been like seeing these words for the last 2 years, so I should know some. Yeah. Like you should know something after this time. So then you said those small, consistent steps allows you to be like this person after. And then after your fight or during or when you were like in the moment and stuff, like obviously how did it feel? And then what was like that big like learning experience or like that feeling you got from like the after effect?
Yeah, I mean it was extremely exciting. So I really enjoyed every second of it, even just like even when he was getting hits on me, I was like, all right, let's go. Like, this is awesome. Like, this is what I'm here for. I'm with it. Obviously I don't want to get hit, but like, that's part of the game.
Yeah.
And I was like, all right, if you got that, like, let's go. I'll get you back right away. So it felt really exciting. I could hear my coaches helping me out, like, and internally, I just wanted to like go out and like kind of like prove to them that the effort they poured into me is worth something. Like, is just beneficial, and obviously they know what they're doing, and I can just be a testament to that. And I just wanted to go out and kind of like put on a show. At the end of the day, it's an event, and just kind of like expressing or being a student of the sport, like trying to expand the reach of the sport in a sense, like doing my part to contribute to Muay Thai or kickboxing, right? And just contributing to that promotion that they put on. I just wanted to kind of like elevate the whole environment around me is kind of like how I was feeling. And I guess after the fact, I think it's just like you can do things that you once thought were impossible if you're willing to commit to implementing that plan.
Yeah, and it's like you said, it's like reciprocity, like where you're reciprocating the value they put into you by showing up. You're showing them, hey, like my cup's full now. You guys poured in from your full cup into me. Let me show you guys why I'm gonna pour some back. Like I'll give back to it. So it's awesome that like you got to have that experience, and even have like the humbleness and like the dropping of ego to be thinking that way. Because people think like, oh, fighter, oh, this kind of combat this, or they do this, they do that. People think that they're the more arrogant ones. They're the more this, they're the showboaters. Sure. They make events. But realistically speaking, to be at a high level or to be doing it at some level, you also need to have a very lowered ego. So it's cool that like something that requires kind of like a high sense of self-worth or ego or confidence in oneself also needs to have a lower ego to learn. So again,
for sure.
How do you feel like you manage that? Like having like the cocky confidence, where it's like you teeter on the brink of, I feel so good about myself. I'm that guy. Like, what's good? Like, that's me versus, okay, like this is God-given gift. This is talent. This is God gives me the ability to work hard. So like, how do you feel as an individual kind of manage that? Because something that I've always felt and I struggled with, where like I had this like almost blind confidence growing up. Everyone's like, Ali, how are you so confident? And I'm like, I don't know, like I feel like I can achieve. I feel this, but when you're a 16-year-old brat, like to people, you know what I mean? Like you're talking to like a grown adult and they think like, why are you so confident like this? Like there's no reason for you to be this confident. You know nothing, but you feel this internally. So how do you feel like you've managed that kind of energy?
Yeah. I think luckily the culture at the gym I go to is sensational, and there's a lot of people that are way better than me there. So I can get humbled real quick in the gym. I think that confidence is important, but having that balance is going to help you get further. If you're overconfident and you just think you can like showboat in a fight and not proper practice proper defense and stuff like that, then I just don't think you're going to succeed. Like kind of like anything, you need to keep that foundation of trying to continue to grow and trying to improve yourself along the way. Another thing on that, I think it's just important, like as I'm in the ring, some of the like you can't really do too much thinking as you're engaged in something like that. I guess like you're not thinking about what happened last week, what you're eating for dinner. Your focus is very intentional, and luckily I visualized that experience, so I was almost like getting deja vu as I was going through it, which I found comfort in. So I think that's what helped me to be more comfortable in the ring. Like I felt like I've been there before and that sort of thing, which that was my first one in like being in an octagon, and just wanting to prove to my coaches like and the people around me, like there were people there that I've fought before and are highly ranked, and then there are people that are like thinking about fighting and that sort of thing. So I want to like prove to them that like if you continue to show up and continue to train the way that I was like very intentional and very serious about, then you can do this too. There's no difference between me and you in that sense.
No, and I love that. And it also comes down, like you said, to that mindset where it always leads back to the mind, where it's like believe that you can achieve and you can be there. But if you don't believe in yourself, or you don't even have the self-belief or want to do it, then you're never gonna. So I just love that, like you have that mindset. And it's cool because when you said like the first time I was in octagon, you got deja vu. And then like for me, like whenever I get deja vu or like I have that experience, I always think of it and get comfort in it too. Because some people think like deja vu is weird and stuff, and no one really can explain the reason, right?
Yeah.
But a theory I have, which is like just shooting it out there, is like I always think that when I get deja vu, I think it's like God telling me like you're on the right path.
Yeah.
And I always feel comfort in it too. And it's like first time I've really heard someone else say it that way, because I always say like I get comfort in the deja vu because I'm like, yo, that means I'm on the right path. God's like, you're doing the thing that your destiny was leading up to.
Do you have and it's fine if not, but like a specific example or a certain endeavor that
so like,
comes up with you?
Yeah. So like I think that there was a deja vu moment, but like, sometimes I'll get deja vu, but it's not about the physical thing I'm doing. It's what I'm thinking, which I think is crazy. Like, it's not just the physical thing that's happening.
That resonates with me too.
You know what I mean? It's like almost like I thought this thought in my head with this surrounding, but it was not about the surrounding. It was about what I was thinking. And I'm like, that's crazy. Because
thoughts are things, man.
Because why could you be thinking of this thing with this environment? They were so different that it wouldn't make sense logically.
Okay.
Then I'm like, okay, so there was a deja vu that had happened recently where I was talking to someone and we were going through an experience. It was like an emotion. It was talking about something we'll do in the future. Okay, cool. But then it was like, boom, deja vu. But the deja vu was a thought I had about something else, not the situation I was talking about.
Really?
I'm like, oh, this feels like I'm on the right path. You know, like, and then when you get those deja vu moments, sometimes I'll get like the experience of like some good news coming or something about my business, something like this or something that, and then I'll read it. I'm like, oh, it's awesome. And that same day, like maybe 20 minutes later or before it, I'll get like a deja vu or something. And I'm like, what? Like, and it's so random. And I'm just like, that means I'm on the right path. That means this was the right thing for me. That means this thing that I've been stressing about, this worry, is now sort of solved. Or the anxiety is not induced anymore. Then I had a deja vu about like a thought in my head afterwards or something. And I'm like, peace. And it feels like very peaceful when I get them. So
yeah, no, I think it's a interesting feeling to have like the deja vu, or just like that feeling, or these small signs that like I think like a lot of the world around us can be like symbolism for like a spiritual endeavor, or like learning spiritually. It's like you get small signs here and there, or like you'll be rewarded if you're doing things that are, on the right path, and you're like living life with a positive attitude and benefiting others.
And people always say like, I think I recently wrote down in my journal, like, you know, things happen for me, like I'm lucky. And like, obviously, like luck is like luck, you know, roll the dice. You might get 6, you might not. But when you have the mindset of like, I'm lucky, I'm blessed, like God, it's like, it's not even saying like God favors me because I'm me, but that things are happening for me, not just like at me. So like things are going in your way, and having that positive mindset. And then like in turn, like asking for like God, or like manifesting things to God, saying like, oh, look, I really want this. I really want to achieve this. I really just help me out. Like the power is in your hands. Like I relinquish my control over this situation.
I see.
And when you relinquish that control, in Arabic, it's called tawakkul, which means like trust in God.
Okay.
So like having that trust in God, having that trust in the higher power, the universe, right? God. However, people have their own personal beliefs, but they push it. You feel this way because you're relinquishing that control to something greater than yourself. And when you do that, it actually strengthens you. But again, it's it's that weird concept where it's like remove control of myself, gain more. How? You know?
Yeah. And thought that comes to mind that I've been implementing, like as I go through things that tend to, seemingly require courage for me, but like I try to externalize it and just put it up to God in a sense, is just faith over fear. So like these things that you're going to have to face fear to have the success that you may desire, or it's just going to come up, right? But if you have faith in, what you want to do, who you want to be, how you want to serve the world, then overcoming these fears should be secondary to just doing what you need to do in faith that things are going to work out.
And it's really hard, especially nowadays, where like obviously like being our age and stuff, like we live in this very nihilistic society where people kind of, they live this fast life, like you said, like they don't really invest in themselves, and people might invest in projects, money, crypto, stocks, whatever it is, but how many people actually invest in themselves? And I always tell people that the first expenditures I ever made in my life was me investing in myself. And I kind of, like I said, I maybe might have did it backwards, where you're supposed to financially get situated and then work on the rest. But for me, I felt like I spiritually invested in myself, where like I didn't work my tail off 50-hour work weeks or anything right away when I want to spiritually grow. I focused 100% on spiritually improving my mindset, becoming a better man, doing those things religiously, saying, what is my faith? What do I really believe in? Why do I believe? And then when you start rewiring your brain into that mindset, the rest sort of followed very easily, which is something that I thought about even with us talking. And then in turn, it made me feel like, okay, if I can improve myself in these lenses of life, in these different spiritual experiences, different things, raising my energy levels, enlightenment, chakras, all these different things, it then in turn made me realize, you know what? Like, to invest in oneself is one of the best investments to do, because what's the point of being rich if you don't have your health? Right. What's the point of being rich and wealthy if you don't have your mental health? Why is it that like then people commit suicide even though they're rich and famous and wealthy? And then all these different things, it don't always led back to like that spiritual strength, that mental strength. So I feel like it's nice to know that, like, in asking that question of what would you recommend to people, obviously just anyone who wants to get into self-improvement, that it's not just about the bronze, but it's about improving the brain.
No, I think the bronze are definitely secondary. I've gone through times where I was very big into the intellectual aspect, so learning about like just stoicism and like taking responsibility for your actions, or like existentialism, like if you're not feeling like you have meaning in your life, to go out and create that meaning, as opposed to like waiting for something to come in and change. And that those are the times where like I would just go, like I started like running and doing things that I like totally avoided before, and I would be doing like just really high like almost like muscular endurance, like, all right, just for my mental benefit, I'm going to do 100 reps. And it was like the lightest weight in the world, but it was like, now I'm feeling like, all right, if I'm doing these things, like I'm gaining endurance with my muscles, I'm gaining endurance with the way that I'm running more than I ever have. Then it poured over into my career and how I was like serving others and my social relationships. Like I was less, or I was able to kind of like continue on with more endurance in other areas of my life as I developed, or as these thoughts that I was learning from philosophy, or from those certain things that I was like learning about, they poured into the other aspects of my life, and I saw like these benefits that weren't initially there, if you will.
Mm-hmm. No, it's awesome too, because even when you like talk about like that collectiveness of it, you know, like it's not just a one trick pony. It's not just do this, get this, but it's that spiritual, emotional, everything journey of yourself.
Yeah, and I think I've struggled in the past. Like for me, it's easy to set goals for the physical and the financial because there are numbers, but it's not always like the numbers that we're after. It's more of like the feeling of security, safety, confidence, just, you know, internal power. Like you feel vitality. And I've struggled, I think, in the past with like setting like emotional goals or like social goals, because they're not always as quantifiable, if you will. But I've realized that if I'm raising the bar in my physical wellness or my intellectual growth, like these things that maybe I thought weren't coming as easily to me, as long as I'm improving myself, I can still set these goals, even if they're not like quantifiable, like, you know, run this mile in this time or something like that. It's more so like just having the intention to improve socially and like benefiting others in those relationships, as opposed to, you know, I want to talk to 10 people a day, or I want to do this and that. But I think, you know, it's helpful to have those quantifiable metrics, but a lot of the time, as long as you're doing it for a greater meaning, then those numbers can get surpassed more easily than if you're like, oh, I need to do this today.
Yeah, and it's more about having like a theme rather than like a number, like you said. And I remember watching a video by CPG Gray, and he had this video explaining like how to really make New Year's resolutions. Okay. And obviously us going into 2025 soon and stuff, it always makes me like jokingly laugh. Like every year since then, I've done like a theme as well, where it's like the year of growth. Year of health, year of this, year of that. So you make it a year of, and then insert whatever word that you want your year to be about. So say like, I want to lose 25 pounds. I want to lose 100 pounds. I want to lose this. I want to gain muscle. All these different things. You don't say like year of losing 20 pounds, because again, it's a number. You say year of health. Okay, so what does the year of health mean? It means I'll run. It means I'll work out. It means I'll walk every day. It means I'll eat right. It means I won't eat as much junk food. I won't drink as much. I won't smoke as much. Health is so large. I'll sleep more. So then you make the theme based upon the overall goal, which is be healthy.
Yeah.
Not lose 20 pounds.
I really like that. And I think I've found, like, I heard about this, but I wasn't like, I didn't experience it or try it out for myself until, I guess, in the last few years. But it's like, instead of setting goals of, I don't want to do this, while you're focused on that, you're not focused on like the aspiration or the positive side. So always set goals or set intentions that are more positive. And then as you're focused on these positive things, and you know, if I'm focused on this mic, there's not really much else going on around it. But if I'm focused on the floor, then I'm like distracted. So if I'm thinking, don't look at the floor, the thoughts going through my head are
Look at the floor.
Right? But if I'm thinking like, you know, talking to the mic, have conversation, go back and forth, then I'm focused on this and I don't need to worry about the negative side. I just need to focus on what, you know, the aspiration or the thing that I want to be doing.
Yeah, and it's always like, people always say things like look at like the goal, right? And it's even in soccer sometimes, like everyone's like, how'd they hit the goalie? Like they shot the ball and they could have hit
the goalie.
They could have hit the ball anywhere else,
Crazy.
but they hit there. But then the best players in the world, I remember I was watching videos of like how to score more goals and different things. And like, I never look at the goalie. I just look at the open net.
Right.
And I just shoot it there.
So true.
And I'm like, it made so much sense. And then when I started, like, and the thing is, even when you're playing, it's still so hard to mindsetly like change yourself to like, where's the open goal? Put it there.
Right. That's like if you're, I know like comes up in like mountain biking or like when I had a motorcycle, this came up too. It's like you don't want to look at the thing you're trying to avoid. You need to look at the path that you need to go. And I'm sure the same thing can go for life, right?
It's like, and even in soccer, everyone's like, it looks sometimes like you're dancing when you play, or like you're like moving around and stuff. I'm like, yeah, because sometimes I'll just look where the space is on the field and I'll just jump the ball into that space and use my body to protect. And I'll just keep moving the ball into the space constantly that I see. But then like that's why the geniuses of the game, like you look at the Messis, the Salahs, the Ronaldos, like when you watch them play, they're literally pushing the ball into the one spot that like you're not gonna get it.
Right.
And even like a young cat right now that's playing Musiala in the German league, he literally, like when I'm watching him play, everyone's like the German Messi, they call him, right? And I'm watching him play, and like when he does like his little touches, it's almost like he puts the ball in the next spot away from the person he sees as the defender. And he constantly does it. But it's almost like instinctive at this point when you watch him play. Right. And you wonder, and you're like, it's because all he's doing is pushing the ball to where the next space is, where he can defend the ball and put his body in between the person. Yeah. So then either they have to foul him or they have to wait for him to make another move. So it's so cool to see like that is the mindset in life too, where it's look at the opportunities. If you're focused on opportunities, you're focused on that you're lucky, you're focused on that next thing, those things will attract to you because you're looking for them. You're looking for growth. You're looking for success. You're looking for how can I make it out? You're looking for the next opportunity rather than that tunnel vision of like the bad, right? Instead of you opening that tunnel vision to only the positive aspects for you and accepting blessings when they come to you, accepting opportunities. And I remember watching a movie, what was it, by Jim Carrey's like the Yes Man or something like that. And like the premise of the movie is that like he always say no all the time to everything. So like obviously some genie or something told him, oh, say now you're forced to say yes to everything. And like in turn he fell on the love of his life. He ended up trying a bunch of new things, and he became this way better person. And then it makes me think like, you know what, maybe I should be saying yes to more things or more opportunities that come to me, or if someone needs help, I just say yes blindly. Sure. Who knows? So I think that's kind of a really cool concept that came out of that.
That is cool. I think positioning is so important, especially with that analogy for the soccer player. And then in terms of just like saying yes to these things, I think can open up those doors that you didn't really realize. Like I think saying yes to, you know, like a spontaneous thing or just doing things that you wouldn't normally do is what really opens up life in a new way.
And obviously you have to use your brain naturally. It's like if something is like this is where intuition matters. Is that intuitively, if you feel like this isn't the right thing, trust that. Sometimes people force like the decision because it's the logical thing to do, but they don't listen to their intuitive nature or what their heart is telling them. Because your gut, your heart, like these things are connected to your brain. So you'd be surprised when your body sometimes tells you first before your brain does.
Yeah.
Like in the sense of like you feel like this uncomfortable situation with this person. You feel you just feel this weirdness around it, this energy. But most people sometimes ignore because they think like, oh, I'm just overthinking it.
Yeah.
But sometimes you should trust it.
Absolutely. I think I'm from the camp that you should really just like, if something doesn't feel right in your gut, like get out of the situation, get out of that environment, get out of, go do something new as soon as you notice that. Because I feel like a lot of people like wait in a job that they absolutely hate for like just way too long, and it's like soul sucking. Like they're not living the life that they want to, and it's not always easy to make those decisions, but like set yourself up so that you can make a career change, or like meet up, or like go find a new hobby, or go find a new social circle, in a sense. Like it's not always easy, and you may need to go through that winter season before you actually like see the fruits from that labor, or from that effort that you've been putting in. But I think it's just people limit themselves by staying in situations that don't benefit them or really truly benefit the others. Like you're not benefiting others by doing something that you're going to half-ass, if you will.
Exactly. No, I love that. And what is something that you feel like people don't know about life or yourself?
I would just say like how powerful the mind is, and how much you can change your life in like 100 days. So to me, I tend to set goals, and I'm pretty good about like setting like a 30-day goal or 90-day goal, and sometimes a lot of times I'll have like a journaling session. I'll be like, all right, this is definitely like an issue in my life, whatever it is. And I try to think about the things that I can do to control that and improve the outcome that I'm, currently frustrated with. This frustration, I need to use it for positive and make a change, because obviously I'm not happy in this situation, whatever it is. So sometimes I'll set like a 100-day goal, and it's just like a few minor habits that are going to help me to change, make changes internally that are going to impact the external reality that I'm living in, or like whether it's just like small mindset changes, or my physical health, or my financial wealth, or these social interactions and relationships, whatever those are. I think that people can truly change their lives in 100 days. I don't think like these 5 or 10-day things are really going to do much, but if you have a few months under your belt, you're going to be in a much better spot if you're making some small positive change each day.
No, I genuinely like that. And even for me, like I always look at life as like seasons and stuff, naturally, like you're saying, like the fall, spring, winter and stuff. But even for me, sometimes like I'll look at things and break it down by day, like in my planner. But then my planner goes by week, and then by week goes by month, obviously, naturally. But then what you do every day becomes what you do every week. What you do every week becomes what you do every month, and so on and so forth. Yeah. So then like you all become a collection of these like micro habits that you create. So then it's, to me, I remember like a couple years ago, it was like, create your dream life. And I was like, my dream life. I was like, give me your dream day. I was like, okay, wake up.
It's a fantastic practice.
Right? Wake up, pray, gratitude, do a lesson, journal, And I look and I'm wondering like, okay, these are the things I would want to do every day. But then like sometimes everyone's like, okay, but like, does it change? Are you spontaneous still? I'm like, yeah, I'm very spontaneous. It doesn't mean that this is the life I have to live and blueprint it, and I do only this every single day for the next 50,000 years of my life. You know what I mean? Like, no, like you think about like this is your framework, your blueprint to being the best version of yourself.
Yeah, I think those are key. Like having a framework and a blueprint. A lot of times I'll like learn from others, or like learn about their blueprint and then apply it to like exactly what I want to do. Or even if my goal is to like basically copy them, like I can use their blueprint but adjust it to myself, because I don't have these strengths, or I don't have these skills yet, or I need to develop these skills, or I have this about me that makes it unique and probably beneficial to do in a different way.
Yeah, and it's so funny you say that, because for me, like, I'll look at, obviously, naturally, it's like there's so much advice out there on the internet. So many people telling you, do this, do this, do this.
Yeah.
And it gets so crowded. Like, it's so much. And if, like, you want to use social media, you want to give advice and be positive, how do I do it without making people feel like if you don't do this, like, you're going to fail, you're a know-it-all, you're a nobody. But it's like, no, like, but what I do, like you said, like, sometimes I look and say, like, okay, that's a great kind of a practice. Let me try that out and tailor it to me. And I feel like everyone that listens to this and listens to different things, like, always tailored advice or always tailor things based upon what you want. Because if you're not tailoring it upon what you want, then you're living my life.
Right.
And no one's going to live my life besides me. So
Yeah.
it's like how I do something may be unorthodox. It may be a little crazy. If you like a little bit of the crazy, yeah, you can take a little bit out of it. But you're most likely not going to just model it after me 100%.
Right.
And obviously, we're all imperfect. No one's perfect.
No.
So we're all going to have our flaws. We're all going to have our strengths and weaknesses. So I do really appreciate kind of like that way you kind of thought about that as well.
Yeah, for sure. And I agree with what you're saying. Like, people have different goals, but they want to follow the plan of somebody with like completely different goals, or even like a different mission behind what they're doing. Whereas you need to, in my opinion, like learn from a bunch of different people and then combine and like have your framework, if you will, as opposed to like following one thing, because to me that won't, like, that's going to be, that might lead me over here, but I know like exactly where I want to be or who I want to be and how I want to get there based on, and I think, or yeah, just like having that North Star and making sure that you use their stuff more as like inspiration for what you're doing, not like an exact finite blueprint, but more flexible. And I think you'll kind of like, if you say you have your North Star, you're probably going to like take many hits on both sides and like continue to autocorrect until you are really like aligned in with like not as much variance, right? Like you can have a guru or a coach or a mentor, and they could be on two totally different sides of things. Like, for example, one might say like focus 100% on your product and never market something, and then the other's like marketing is everything in business. And sure, they're both successful. They have this, maybe this dollar amount that you're aspiring to, but like if you don't know, if you don't have like more of a meaning behind what you're doing or like your why, if then it's hard to determine who to follow, and it can get mixed up because they're both successful on paper, but they're not aligned with like your goals in a sense, or like how you're trying to impact the world.
And it's so funny you say that, because like literally I was talking to someone the other day and I was saying like it's so annoying on the internet sometimes where like you'll look at that and it's like product or marketing, right? Perfect example. But then like you said, someone's telling you worry about the product will sell, and I believe in that. Okay, that makes sense. In the marketing, if you don't market the product, then who knows about it? Okay, you're right. And like they're both saying the other is wrong, but you're like, okay, like I can see both points, perspectives change. But then even for me, sometimes I'll be on the internet and you'll obviously hear this person talking, and sometimes I'm just like, how many of y'all are just lying? Like, you know what I mean? I'm like, how many of you are just saying some BS? Like, you're not even saying the truth. You're not even saying, like, honestly what you make or how you make it. But it's like, even sometimes, like, I understand, like, the business of, like, selling knowledge or selling a course or different things. But some people, like, I saw, like, a breakdown of, like, some of these people who, like, literally only make their money based upon selling a course. And,
yeah,
like,
a lot of their expertise can be fabricated, I think. And it's easy to make that aesthetic online. But I think that, like, if somebody's buying their course and it's on a subscription model, like I've bought a bunch of courses because it sounded good and it sounded like something I was into. And then I got into the course and I was like, whoa, this is not what I expected. Or it's like not providing the insight or benefits that I was anticipating. So like I got out right away. Like I was like, well, you know, this feels off. Like I had that gut instinct and I was like, all right, well, you know, maybe I can go out and create something that was similar or better, or find somebody that's doing it better, or just find a different way. But I guess my point on that is it's hard for them to continue to monetize that offer if they're not actually providing like true value, or they don't necessarily like know exactly what they're putting out there. If it isn't, if it doesn't hold true to what they were advertising.
Yeah. And I think also nowadays too, where this is something that I always like really feel in my heart, is that most people aren't original anymore and they don't actually put out new content. Like how many times do you see, like, say on TikTok, Instagram, or different platforms, a joke you saw 10 years ago kind of redone? How many times does it happen?
Way
over and
too
over?
often.
Right? And it happens all the time, right? And I'm like, and now because of how fast media is created and done, I've seen like the same joke multiple times by different creators multiple times. It's like, okay, like it's funny, like it's very entertaining. It'll get you a lot of views,
Sure.
but like that's the level you're putting yourself at. Like I think that sometimes people short sell like their own mindset, their own creativity, their own value. And like even for me, like I've created content before here and there, but I like take hiatuses here and there because I'm just like, I don't like doing it if it doesn't feel authentic. I don't like doing it if I'm having to do a strategy behind it and getting views and, hey, this is how you get this many views if this. I'm like, why can't I just make quality content, do what I like doing, and if it comes, it comes. If it doesn't, I don't care. I enjoy what I do.
I think that's a key point, is like doing something that even if you don't have that monetary incentive behind it, at the end of the day, while it may be beneficial, if you're doing something you really care about and you have a good knowledge base and you've experienced and you're able to share it with others, I think that's a lot more valuable to yourself and to the others. And typically that the money will follow, but it's like an afterthought if you're doing something that you truly care about. And I will say I've watched a bunch of your videos and I really enjoy them. So
no, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah. And it's funny because like I'll get those comments where it's like, it's always the low view videos that give you the most value. Oh, it's like, dude, like I can't believe like you don't have more subscribers. Oh, this. And it's like, I don't market it. I don't promote it. I barely post on Instagram. I don't like using social media, but I know that I have the personality and the know-how, the knowledge, and I care enough to want to talk to new people, to want to do these things. And obviously I have other businesses, and that's fine. But then I'm not just, and like the whole point of this podcast is that I talk to multifaceted people. We're not just one thing. You're not just a guy who trains in Muay Thai and kickboxing. You're not just a guy who used to play sports, this. You're not just this dude. You're so many layers. Absolutely. And I think nowadays we forget that you can be of multiple things. You can be multiple layers of oneself, you know?
Yeah, I think that's true too. And I feel like a lot of times people will, like, it's easy to do, and I'm sure I've done it in the past, like, not in a detrimental way, but like putting people in a box. It's like when you go out and do those things, kind of like I mentioned earlier, like do the things that especially if you're uncomfortable or just trying to add variety to your life, because things can become mundane even if you're doing the things that align with your goals. But just going out and doing these things that kind of like take yourself out of a box, if you will, like going out and doing something that doesn't fit into the exact character profile or the hobby that you're typically doing, but adding these multifaceted aspects to yourself can help actually, to me at least, helps you to create analogies with life. Like I work out all the time, but like I also enjoy doing things like surfing, and I found so many just analogies with like being near the ocean and riding a wave and like doing things like that, where these little seemingly small situations or actions can kind of have like more of a profound impact because they are unique to you. It's not like I go surfing every day, but when I do, it's always like something more meaningful comes from that. Whether I go solo and it's like freezing cold, or I just see the sun come up as I'm riding my last wave in or something like that, or I go with like some friends and we meet up and have a great time or see some dolphins. Like it's always just like a unique experience.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. And I kind of want to ask you, like, just obviously as like being of Gen Z, like, and I would say that we're probably the oldest of Gen Z, and we're kind of the pioneers naturally, being in that 25, 26, 27 range. Those are like going to be the leaders of that next generation. We're the future CEOs, the future presidents, the future business leaders, the future mentors, and we'll have mentees. So as someone that is going to be in this space and someone who is obviously worked on that self-improvement, worked on becoming this better man, where do you see the world going in 5 years?
Yeah, it's a great question. Real quick on that, I think like your future CEOs and that sort of thing, future leaders, it starts with self-control and like self-discipline and managing yourself well. And if you're able to do that, people will basically like catch that vibe, or they will understand that you are confident in who you are and you have conviction in what you're doing and why you do it, and they'll be more likely to follow you. In terms of, sorry, what was it?
Where do you see the world going in like 5 years with?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, well, I think we're doing part of it here. I mean, we're obviously not the first to be doing podcasts, but I think it's going to continue to grow. Like the technology in business is going to accelerate quickly, and I think that things are going to expand at a faster rate over the next couple of years. So I think that by either implementing, these technologies, whether it's AI or just trying to, and it actually reminds me of I think Bill Gates's book, like. Business, I think it was like Business at the Speed of Light or something like that. And it's basically how things are going to evolve, and like it was his anticipation of it, and it's basically like self-fulfilling in a sense, but like how business continues to evolve in a faster rate similar to technology. And what I would say to that is that you want to continue to have a solid foundation and a solid connections as that expansion is going on, or else I feel like your head and kind of like your thoughts, and you'll just feel disconnected if all you're doing is things online. Like if you don't have a foundation of like physical health and you're just like a Wally character that's sitting on those hovering chairs watching TV and eating junk food, you want to have that foundation. And I think it's important to have that connection, that human to human connection in person, sure, but also online, because I find those are beneficial, especially if you can turn the camera on and have conversation. You're not just like texting to a chat bot or something like that all day. Like having human connection and shared values, shared interests with people, or just trying to like actually care. Like it seems like it's obvious you're a very caring person and willing to be curious and learn and listen from others. And I think having those aspects is going to greatly benefit your life, as opposed to as is also true for the people that you kind of come in contact with as things continue to evolve.
Yeah, absolutely. And no, I really love that answer. And what is like an unpopular opinion that you might have?
Ooh, an unpopular opinion. I would say, kind of back to what I mentioned earlier, just like the idea of if something doesn't feel right, don't wait for something better to just come along. Don't wait for somebody to save you in a sense, or for things to get so like we don't always think of this, but like for things to get worse before you make a change. Like if you feel like something is off, have the confidence or the courage to step up and actually make a change, and you'll be benefiting not only that situation, whether it's a hobby you're doing, a relationship, a business that you're working with, whatever it is. I think if things are feeling off, it's probably for a good reason. And I think you'll start to see signs possibly as you go through that winter season, if you will, on your way to something new by trying new things. And even if you're not good at them at first, just kind of continuing on and knowing you're on the right path, as long as you feel, you're doing things that are good intention, and having, a lot of times to me, having people around you to kind of like see. Like, to me, that connection part is so important, because if you're just out doing things and, not really like discussing them, or you're just learning all these skills and you think you know these skills, but then you don't go and like practice with somebody or something like that. I think it's just important to have others around you that help you to guide the direction that you're going. So to me, that's going to be having mentors, especially your friend group, your family, I'm sure can help. Especially with different things. And then also I would advise being a mentor in some sense to somebody else, because at the end of the day, all the impact that you have, to me, isn't always about like what awards or accolades you have, but really how you impacted other people in your space.
Yeah, no. And I genuinely like really appreciate hearing that too, because to have someone who's around our age also be like a sense of God-fearing mindset, positivity and stuff in a world that doesn't really push that as not enough to our generation. So it's awesome to hear that and to know that like you have that mindset of make sure you create your own reality. Make sure that you are the foundation for your life. Make sure you understand that the decisions you make today impact tomorrow. And I just genuinely love just the energy that you're bringing and stuff too. So absolutely. I wanted to ask you, obviously, like naturally, I always ask every guest, what is a word in Arabic that you want to learn? And the word you chose was like hello, or how to say what's up, basically. And the way you pronounce it is like just saying simply like salam.
Salam.
Salam. So it's like...
Okay. What is that exactly translated?
So the full sentence of that would be like salam o alaikum.
Oh, yeah.
So salam alaikum, right? It's like...
Yeah.
But the thing is salam theoretically translates to peace.
Okay.
So it's like peace and...
I like that.
So it's like, in the sense of saying hello, it's like you're saying hello, but with peace. It's like that kind of concept of like, it's not just hi, but it's like salam and like also like peace as well to you as well. So that's kind of that as well.
When somebody says salam alaikum or assalamu alaikum,
yeah,
those...
yeah, they can interchange. It's like the dialects change and stuff.
Okay,
yeah.
Okay. So what does it mean again? If I say alaikum as well?
Alaikum's like peace to you. It's
okay.
Like alaikum is like to you.
No way.
It's like peace to you, but it's like hello to you. Kind of like, I guess, like if I English translated it as well.
Sure.
But then it's like, then the only response back would be like wa, which is like and. It's like wa alaikum.
Wa alaikum.
Assalam.
Wa alaikum assalam.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's like wa alaikum assalam is like, so peace and like hello to you. It's like peace and hello to you back, kind of.
How about salaikum salam?
Alaikum assalam?
I think so.
Yeah, so it's
alaikum
just
salam.
so alaikum assalam is like the response back.
Peace to you.
Oh yeah, the response
Or,
back to like Salaam
yeah.
alaikum, wa alaikum salam.
Okay, I see.
Yeah, so it's kind
Nice.
of the response. And then I was asked like what your favorite quote is.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I'd love to ask you what you kind of felt one of your favorite quotes are.
Yeah. So this one is Ralph Waldo Emerson, and I think the quote. I know that there's debate on whether it was specifically written by him, but basically, I think it goes. The power that we
gain power of temptations of what we resist in.
Yeah, thank you. We gain the power of the temptations we resist, and I find that to absolutely be true, and I think it is empowering because a lot of times it is so easy to succumb to temptation, but it's because it's like, all right, I can get by, like I'll be fine if I succumb to this temptation. But I believe that, and I think this has led into like, that philosophy has impacted me a bunch because like I don't drink or smoke or anything at this point. Like I'm sober, and I feel like there's sure there's drawbacks to it, but I think that I've gained so much more power and so much more energy from delaying or just, instead of trying to use those things to gain power, like removing them from my life and gaining power from avoiding or from just refocusing, if you will.
Yeah.
So gaining power from resisting temptation as opposed to succumbing to it.
Of course, and I generally love that too, especially like being religious and like caring as well. Like for me, once I mentally keep giving up vices, keep giving up things that slow me down, I've noticed that when you give up things for the sake of God or for the sake of self-improvement, then God rewards you with better than what you let go.
Absolutely.
And it's so true because like the more you let go of vices, the more you let go of these temptations, you reach your higher self. Yeah. And you can't reach your higher self if you're too focused on desires and distractions. The same way where it's like it's very easy to desire women as a man, right? It's very easy in the sense of like I want to go sleep around, I want to do that. But when you focus on one woman, you focus on one thing. Like there's so many studies that show like the men that end up getting married and stuff end up making so much more money. Why? Because they have a support system. Yeah. They have purpose. There's a reason behind it. And when they have kids, everyone's like, "Oh, I don't have the finances to be able to support kids." But how many times do people have kids and then somehow there's always food on the table? Somehow there's always money coming in, right? And it comes to that level because they're moving towards that worthy ideal. So I think that's just like an amazing way to like kind of end the whole thing with that quote. So
yeah, absolutely. I think if people take something from this podcast, it would definitely that would be one of the things, and just trying to implement it in your life. And I think a lot of people know what their vices are, what their bad habits are. And oftentimes, like in the past myself, I thought these things were like part of me, or these habits were like part of me, or I would feel isolated if I stopped doing these certain habits or stuff like that. But looking back, it was actually a lot easier than the fear of trying to change was. Like I had a bigger fear about these things, and I feel like I've noticed the positive benefits compounding in my favor, and it was a lot easier, or just I would say simpler than people make it out to be. Like they'll have, like people come to me and they're like, "Oh, I want to stop drinking completely," and I'm like, "All right, we'll do it." And then obviously I'm just like kind of like half joking, but I'm also kind of serious, and they're like, "Oh no, my friends are like doing this and that," and they try to make their situation caused by external variables, whereas their situation to me is actually caused by their internal dialogue with themselves. So if they don't think they can do it, kind of like you mentioned earlier, those people that set the goals and have the belief in themselves that they can achieve these things, then they're more likely to go out and do it. So just have some confidence, and you can go out and kind of do whatever you'd like.
Yeah, I love that. And thank you again, Craig, for coming on to the show and like having this conversation with me. It's been awesome to hear your opinions and to really feel like inspired from just the words that you came with.
Awesome. Absolutely. This was a really enjoyable experience. I've been on a few podcasts before, but just wanted to commend you on this one. Thank you. And also, if there are other people that want to inspire others or share their story, I think this is a great place to do it. So definitely stop on by and get in contact. And I'm sure you'll have them on.
Of course. Thank you. So thank you guys again for tuning in to another episode of the Oly Kanoli Show. Again, today we had Craig, so please leave a bunch of comments down below. Awesome conversation. Really intelligent individual. And again, to work on yourself is to work on a better future for the people around you and for the rest of your life. So thank you again, Craig, and I hope to see you guys next time.
Awesome. Thank you.
Bye-bye.